Mark Carney's signature piece of legislation passed in the House on Friday. It was the MP's final vote before rising for the summer. Bill C-5, also known as the One Canadian Economy Act, gives the government sweeping new powers to approve major projects. It also aims to tear down the federal barriers to interprovincial trade. The bill, though, is not without its critics. Indigenous and environmental groups raise concerns about the sweeping powers it would give Cabinet. This week, Carney convened a meeting with Canada's premiers to talk about Bill 5, but also trade negotiations with the U.S. I spoke to British Columbia's Premier, David Eby, right after his First Minister's call. Premier Eby, welcome back to the program. Nice to see you.
Nice to see you, Rosemary.
I know you got an update from the Prime Minister on Friday, as did all First Ministers. I would imagine sort of about the week that was. What was his message to you about either the United States or other things that the premiers are preoccupied with right now?
Well, there was a lot of conversation and certainly some hope that in the next 30 days we're going to see some progress in trade discussions with the United States. Certainly, I'm very supportive of the Prime Minister's strong response to U.S. tariffs on steel and aluminum. We have a strong aluminum sector here in British Columbia. We have a strong steel manufacturing sector. I guess the anxiety that I have and what I expressed to the Prime Minister was that in the announcement that was made on Thursday, that additional tariffs might be placed on non-free trade agreement countries, as well as additional anti-dumping duties on free trade agreement countries that we have relationships with, that risks opening a new trade war front here.
He did say on Thursday that those additional counter tariffs would only go into effect after this 30-day window that he and the president have agreed to. You said there's some hope around that window. What leads you to believe that there can be progress by the end of July 21st, I think is the date?
Well, it's hard to know with the president, and we'll have to wait and see. To have this understanding, apparently, with the U.S. that the 30 days will be spent constructively working towards an agreement. That's something different than we've heard before, and it does. I think all of us are hoping to put this behind us and at least get some stability so we can all move on, and that's what I think this holds out for us.
The other, I don't know if this came up in the meeting, but obviously the other piece of this, the piece that we're doing domestically is C-5 and these projects of national interest that have to be identified. I spoke with Alberta Premier Danielle Smith. People know, obviously, she would like another pipeline from Alberta to the North Coast in your province. You have said no. Premier Smith says that she thinks she can convince you because now is the moment to do so. Have you had that conversation? Do you agree that there is some way to make this palatable for you in the province?
Well, I think it's a simplification and not quite right to say that I've said no. We've supported Alberta, Manitoba, Saskatchewan with a trade corridor from Manitoba right through to Prince Rupert. It could include energy projects. It could potentially include a heavy oil pipeline project. But what I don't support is tens of billions of dollars in federal subsidy going to build this new pipeline when we already own a pipeline that empties into British Columbia and has significant additional capacity, 200,000 barrels. I think we should start there. I think we should start with the projects that are shovel ready to go to grow our economy. And there is no company advocating for this project that's going to bottom line it. There's no money for it. Let's put our resources into the projects that are ready to go. And in fact, there are many between BC and Alberta that we can work on together.
Okay, but let me just better understand your position then, because I clearly did oversimplify it. You're not saying no to another pipeline through British Columbia. You're saying let's do other things first, and then if a proponent comes along and has a proposal that does not involve public money, in that case, you're willing to consider it. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, I've been clear with the Premier. We'll cross that bridge when we come to it. I'm happy to sit down with Alberta and have those conversations. She is advocating strongly for this project. I am very opposed to the idea that this would assume all federal money and hoover it up when we have major projects with private proponents, cash on the table, ready to go to hire people and build. Let's focus on those.
Yeah, I get that position, but just so I'm clear, if there were private capital behind it, then you would at least allow it to be part of the conversation on the table?
We in fact signed an MOU with Western premiers around a trade corridor that could include energy projects, including heavy oil. Obviously, there are major issues, including the tanker ban on the North Coast, the underused capacity in TMX and other pieces. But we did sign off on that.
Okay, you mentioned the other projects that you are interested in that would be probably easier, that maybe are already almost greenlit with Alberta and others. What are priority projects for British Columbia if once this bill is now law?
Well, we have major energy projects here in the province that are ready to go. LNG Phase 2, the Silisms LNG project. We also have clean energy projects. We have major hydroelectricity projects, as well as wind and solar projects that will intertie with the Yukon and with Alberta to assist them in decarbonizing and in driving industry. We have massive mining sector projects in the Northwest. We're working with First Nations there. It's like the Ring of Fire, except we're actually working with the First Nations, and the projects have mining companies that are world leading and prepared to start digging. So British Columbia will be the engine of this new Canada that is forming, where we're standing on our own 2 feet, where we're facing out to the world, and we're ready to go. And part of that, a significant part of that, involves partnership with Alberta.
Okay, Premier Eby, I appreciate it. Thank you for your time.
Thanks for having me.
Some Indigenous leaders are still concerned about how Ottawa is going about this. Trevor Mecredi is the Grand Chief of the Treaty 8 First Nations of Alberta, and he joins me now. Nice to see you, Grand Chief.
Good to see you.
What is your biggest Yeah, I'm glad you're here too. What is your biggest concern about this piece of legislation?
Well, the biggest concern we have is that it's eroding our rights as Indigenous people here, the treaty rights, the rights holders. As we firmly believe, and courts have, they've supported our claims that, the resources belong to us. And this legislation effectively bypasses a lot of our consultative areas, and it's very concerning to our chiefs. As a Treaty 8, we have the tar sands and other major projects in the area that also, impact our nations at every level. And we're looking to be partners and to be respected with this new bill. Yeah. Unfortunately, it didn't happen. So, we're just, I guess, strategizing at this point to see what our next steps are.
Well, the Prime Minister did say on Friday that he's going to have these summits in the summer, 3 summits, First Nations, Métis and Inuit, to talk about sort of the path forward with projects, given that no project has been greenlit yet. What did you think of that promise? And would you like to be at that table to try and inform a little bit how this unfolds?
Well, of course, we heard the news there, along with everybody else, that, he's going to be sitting down with the chiefs and that. And of course, we're concerned because obviously there's a large number of nations throughout Alberta. Some are treaty nations, some are modern treaties, some have different agreements throughout Canada. So it's a very tough issue that the Prime Minister has to solve here. There's over 600 nations that he's saying he's going to consult with, and each nation has their own autonomy. They have their own sovereignty. So, it's going to be a lot of work for him, and we're wondering how he's going to get it done in a way that all of our people can be heard. And that's the concern right now.
Yeah, he did again on Friday, and I'm sure you heard this, but for people that didn't, talk about free, prior, and informed consent. He talked about UNDRIP, the UN protected rights for Indigenous peoples. So he was saying those things that probably you wanted to hear. I wonder what kind of action you want to see to make sure that he understands what kind of consultation is needed and required.
Well, I appeared as a witness before the standing committee to make that point exactly, that we would love to see UNDRIP in the body of the bill, not just the preamble. Make it a type of a legal
requirement,
case marker requirement within the bill is what we're pushing for. We knew that the bill was going to pass, so we went there and we spoke as a witness to make sure that they heard us loud and clear that we'd love to see UNDRIP in the body of the bill, so it could be a law-abiding, I guess, item in the bill. But unfortunately, it didn't make it into the bill.
Though it is a law in Canada, so presumably this law has to respect that one as well. But I just want to end on you're not against projects, and you're not against your community or others finding equity and resources inside these projects. So how do you hope to? Is there a path forward? I guess is what I'm asking, Chief.
Absolutely, there's a path forward.
Yeah.
The path forward is to, strengthen the regulatory process so our people can move with these projects in a way that are not harming our people, our animals, and lands. If there's remediation that can, bring the projects to our levels. We are not anti-industry. We're just looking for the right projects that we can support. Yeah. We have a lot of health impacts. We have a lot of environmental impacts, but the resource revenue doesn't come back to our nations. There's absolutely no resource revenue sharing here in Canada, and that's something that has to change.
Grand Chief Trevor Mercredi, let's speak again as this all unfolds and we start to get a sense of how it's going to work. Thank you so much for your time today.
Thank you.
The House has agreed to the entirety of Bill C-5, an act to enact the Free Trade and Labour Mobility in Canada Act and the Build in Canada Act at the third reading stage.
That is the moment Friday when the Liberal government's One Canadian Economy bill passed the House of Commons. You can see the Prime Minister crossing the floor to shake the hands of Conservatives who helped him pass that bill. The Prime Minister says the bill will help greenlight major projects deemed to be in the national interest. Mark Carney has called this a core or the core part of his government's economic response to U.S. tariffs.
This bill and the economic potential that it will unleash for our country is critical. For far too long, when federal agencies have examined a new project, their immediate question has been why. Now, they will instead ask themselves how.
As I mentioned, Conservative MPs voted with the minority Liberal government to get this bill passed. I asked opposition House Leader Andrew Scheer why they supported it.
You must have seen something useful or constructive in the bill if you voted to support it.
Well, if there's even a glimmer of hope that something might come from this, then Conservatives aren't going to stand in the way of that. We've been the advocates of the energy sector. We are the ones who are advocating more. We want to see whether or not Mark Carney and the rest of the Liberal government, who have spent years fighting against the energy sector, if they can actually get results.
The bill is now, of course, off to the Senate, but it is expected to pass into law by Canada Day. Let's bring in our Sunday Scrub. Rob Russo is the Canada correspondent for The Economist, former parliamentary bureau chief here at CBC. Catherine Levesque is a parliamentary reporter for The National Post, and Émilie Nicolas is a columnist for Le Devoir. Nice to see you all.
Hello, Rosie.
Hello. I'll start with you, Rob. So this is fundamental, says the Prime Minister, to where he sees the country going. It got the support of the Conservatives, but it did seem on Friday as though there was some recognition that perhaps he hadn't done enough to speak to Indigenous communities who had concerns around this. And so he's going to try and course correct some of that in July when he's going to meet with different groups. What did you make of how he presented it on Friday?
It was a tell, I think, when the Prime Minister had the Indigenous Services Minister standing beside him when he made his announcement, when he had his press conference. I think that if you speak to Indigenous leaders across the country, they are concerned. Yes, they believe that the government wants to consult them, but if you want to bring in a bill along those lines, then about how they're going to be consulted, maybe you want to consult them first. There is a concern because they believe that this will divide Indigenous leaders. It already has. And there is also a concern that more angry elements of Indigenous peoples across the country might see this as a spark to take us back to where we were before the pandemic. A lot of people have forgotten that there were rail blockades that had an impact on the Canadian economy. So the Prime Minister has some work to do, without a doubt. That being said, if this was the most important legislation that he felt was going to come out of his government in the first year, for sure, high marks for getting it passed with speed, high marks for getting it passed with a minimum amount of partisanship. I think it's a remarkable reflection of the fact that maybe our politics were polarized, but people weren't. People wanted to get things done.
What did you make, Catherine, of how he presented it on Friday? Because I do think Rob's right. There was kind of an acknowledgement of some of the things that need to be done. We're going to speak to a chief in the next hour because many Indigenous communities felt there wasn't enough consultation before. Now they're going to get some after, which maybe will work out because the projects haven't been selected yet. But give me your sense.
Well, I think what we saw on Friday was Prime Minister Mark Carney was really in damage control mode. We have to understand that he actually met with his Indigenous caucus on Friday, so I'm sure he heard all kinds of things and all kinds of criticism, in addition to those Indigenous chiefs who actually came out last week to say that we could see an Idle No More 2.0. So I think those are very concerning things, to hear at the start of a government. Certainly, he having these summits during the summer, I think might appease some of those concerns, but I don't know if it's going to be enough. We're talking about maybe day summits, one with First Nations, one with Inuit, and one with Métis peoples, roundtables, all these kinds of things. But really, I think the core criticism was really about not consulting them prior to the legislation being tabled. And, frankly, the AFN, for instance, the Assembly of First Nations, actually just got a letter from the Privy Council's office, and they had a week to answer, and they hadn't seen the bill. And, so I understand where the criticism is coming from. That being said, I think the government is also, at least in these first stages, will make sure that the projects that actually go forward have the support already from Indigenous peoples, and that will be a core part of this. But certainly, I think there is a lot of work to do still this summer.
Yeah, Emily?
I think we need to maybe walk back a little bit from the bill and ask ourselves what the question of what Mark Carney's vision is for Canada. Because we've been speaking a lot over the last couple of months about Canada Strong and Canadian identity, Canadian nationalism. And there are a lot of course, discourses and speeches, but really it's about actions and behaviors that speak louder than words. So what we've seen is, for example, a meeting with the premiers and the Prime Minister, where you had the provinces pitching projects to the Prime Minister. And there already was then a lot of criticism of why isn't the AFN, the Métis, and the ITK also at the table pitching projects. It seems to me that the core issues is that there isn't a realization that if Indigenous communities were included at the brainstorming stage, maybe the project would not just go ahead without protest. They would actually be smarter projects. And it seems to me that there is a vision of duty to consult. We're thinking of greater ideas. We want to speed up development in this country, and then we'll make sure we consult you so that you approve it, rather than thinking that Canada would be smarter and better if Indigenous and non-Indigenous people were more in dialogue at every stage of the relationship. Yeah. And I think because there is this gap of understanding, you're running into issues at the stage of even proposing bills and at the stage of consulting about the bill. But I think it's more of a philosophical breakdown than this, and I think we need to be able to acknowledge that.
Yeah, I mean, to Catherine's point, I also am told that the first projects will be projects where there's already Indigenous buy-in in communities. That we'll see, right? But I think that is at least the goal at first. Let's just talk more broadly about the bill in terms of response to Donald Trump and whether it will do the things that the Prime Minister says it will, which is do these huge nation-building projects, the likes of which we haven't seen in decades, Rob. How much pressure is there now, to Andrew Scheer's point, for the Prime Minister to deliver on some of those things?
Well, you talk to the people around the PM, and he certainly seems to feel the pressure. There is no guarantee that these talks are going to succeed, or I think we heard Mr. Carney suggest for the first time that we might not get tariff-free access to the United States. So he talks often about hinge moments. I am struck by the short walk between the rhetoric and the reality. They really do believe that Canada's economy could be in a moment of peril, and that they need to move with purpose, with alacrity, with resolve, no matter what the outcome of the talks with the United States are. So this was foundational. He needed, he felt, to do this in order to begin the hard work of restructuring, which everyone acknowledges is going to take years, but to begin that work immediately, irrespective of how the tariff discussions go with the United States.
Catherine, what do you make of that? I mean, the Prime Minister really leaned in on Friday when he talked about, like, things are not good and there will be more layoffs coming, and this has to be a response to that. I mean, that's fine, except some of these projects are not going to happen very quickly. So, you know, I guess you have to do both things at once, but it might be difficult to deliver quickly on this.
I would agree. I mean, I think the goal of this government, at least in the short term, it seems that they, you know, like you said, have projects ready to go that could actually, you know, get in motion quite quickly. So I think that's the goal of this government. And I think, you know, the goal of this government is also to prevent layoffs, especially in the steel and aluminum sector, because as Rob said, we don't know what will happen in less than 30 days with our talks with the United States. So we really have to make sure that our industries are protected and, you know, given the devastating impacts that this trade war is having on our workers, we have to make sure that there are projects that are ready to go for our workers to actually be busy and to, you know, have our steel and aluminum be used in some sort of sense. So I think, you know, look, the easy part was passing this bill, right? They knew they had Conservative support. They didn't have a lot of resistance doing it. But now the hard part is coming, and I think it will be to actually deliver these projects and, you know, not only in the short term, but also in the years to come, and to make sure that we really, you know, reimagine and recreate this economy to make sure that we don't lose too many jobs.
Emily, last 30 seconds to you.
There might be not a lot of resistance to passing the bill in the House of Commons. In Canada in general, it's different. There is perhaps a social movement brewing, and so we'll see about that. But really, we need to not just calculate partisan politics, that is, in which Indigenous peoples are really, really minoritized when it comes to deciding how this country goes ahead. We think we're going faster, but there's a severe risk we're actually slowing things down on a pragmatic level. Mark Carney is new to politics. I think this might be a lesson that he's learning there. I hope I'm wrong on this.
Rob, Catherine, Emily, go get a coffee. Rob is in his summer location today, so you can go for a swim, Rob, and we'll talk in the next hour. Thank you all. Appreciate it.